I want you to hold out your hands right now. Like literally just hold them out.
Palms facing up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Palms facing up. Bring them close together, side by side, and just look closely at the lines etched into your skin.
Which is something we almost never do, just really stare at them.
Right. Look at the deep creases, the intersecting pathways, those permanent marks that you were just born with. Now, what if I told you that you aren't just looking at biology?
Oh, this is where it gets wild.
It really does.
Yeah.
What if you're actually looking at a classified divine map of the ancient world?
A map right on your body.
Exactly. A map that was designed to expose a millennia-old conspiracy, and it's encoded directly into your DNA so it could never be burned or stolen or erased by some invading army.
I mean, it's the ultimate failsafe, isn't it?
It really is.
We're so accustomed to thinking of history as this thing stored in a library or, buried in the dirt somewhere in a desert.
Right, like old scrolls or pottery.
Exactly. But the framework we are exploring today suggests that the most profound historical document in existence is literally the human body itself.
And that is exactly where we are heading today on this deep dive. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to require checking almost every conventional assumption you have at the door.
Oh, absolutely. Every assumption.
We are embarking on a deep dive that fundamentally dismantles the accepted geography, the history, and the theology of the ancient world.
It's a total teardown.
It is. Our mission today is to entirely unpack this radical, comprehensive, and just staggeringly ambitious theoretical framework. It was developed by Dr. Khaled Waleed, and it's detailed in his text, The Exposing Hand of Babylon and Egypt.
And to fully grasp the architecture of his argument, we really have to look at how he fuses scriptural interpretation with ancient geopolitics, and then ties it all to human anatomy in this single cohesive thesis.
Right. But before we get into the mechanics of how this all supposedly works, I want to establish a very clear baseline for you, the listener.
This is a crucial disclaimer, yeah.
Very crucial. The material we're diving into today contains highly alternative, deeply religious, and historically provocative interpretations of ancient texts, Quranic geography, and global human history.
Some really, really intense claims.
Right. And as your guides on this deep dive, our goal is absolutely not to endorse these viewpoints. We're not here to debunk them either or to take any sort of political or religious side.
We are strictly neutral here.
Exactly. We are just impartially constructing and examining Dr. Waleed's fascinating intellectual architecture so you could fully understand this uniquely challenging perspective.
Our role is basically to build his model in the air, right? So we can all kind of walk around it and see how the pieces fit together.
I love that analogy. Yeah.
And the very first piece of his model requires a complete demolition of the modern map.
Right. So we have the globe.
Yeah.
Specifically the Middle East.
Yep.
Because if you open a standard atlas right now and look for the birthplace of all those major Abrahamic narratives, your finger's probably going to land on the Arabian Peninsula.
You're going to picture the vast arid deserts of modern-day Saudi Arabia.
Right. You picture a landscape that's defined by sand and isolation. But Dr. Waleed looks at that exact same atlas and says it's entirely deliberately fraudulent.
He essentially argues that the desert we call the Arabian Peninsula today is, in his words, a historical and religious nobody.
A nobody.
Yeah. Dr. Waleed claims that no celestial messages, no grand prophetic missions, and no divine civilizations of the magnitude described in sacred texts would ever be centered in a barren, disconnected wasteland.
Which, I mean, that raises an immediate glaring question.
Where does he put it?
Exactly. If the theater of all this ancient divine history isn't the southern desert, where on earth is he putting it?
So he shifts the entire epicenter of human spiritual history significantly north.
Okay. How far north?
Quite a bit. According to Dr. Waleed, the true original Arabian Peninsula that's referenced in ancient and sacred texts is exclusively the region we historically call the Fertile Crescent.
The Fertile Crescent. Okay, so we're talking about the land arching from the Persian Gulf up through Mesopotamia and then back down the Mediterranean coast into Egypt.
Exactly. Specifically, he anchors this sacred geography between two massive life-giving river systems.
The big ones.
Right. He maps it from the Euphrates River in the east to the Nile River in the west.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so in his framework, this original fertile Arabian Peninsula encompasses Iraq, which he identifies as ancient Babylon, and then Syria, Lebanon, Palestine.
Wait, he includes Palestine?
Yes, and he provocatively labels it the Quranic Egypt, or the land of Canaan.
Okay, that's a huge shift.
It is. And then it also includes Jordan and the Nile Delta region, which he refers to as Gypt or Kemet.
Okay, we really need to pause and just look at the sheer scale of this claim.
It's massive.
Because he isn't just disputing a border here or there, he is taking the entire conceptual weight of the Holy Lands and sliding it hundreds of miles north and wedging it between these two rivers.
Between the Euphrates and the Nile.
Right. And the sociological implications of that are staggering. I mean, if the entire world of billions of people, centuries of academic scholarship, endless theological texts, if they all believe the Holy Lands are in the deep desert.
How do you justify moving it?
Exactly. How does one even begin to justify that everyone is looking at the wrong map? It's like finding out the Roman Empire was actually based in Scandinavia.
That's a great analogy. And he tackles that by introducing a very specific concept. He calls it mass horror, which translates roughly to bewitched or enchanted history.
Bewitched history.
Yeah. Dr. Waleed posits that the map isn't wrong because of some medieval cartographical error. It didn't just get drawn poorly.
Okay, so what happened?
It's wrong because history itself was intentionally fabricated.
So, like a deliberate geographical memory wipe.
A grand orchestrated deception. He argues that this was a massive psychological and spiritual operation designed to mislead the human race entirely.
Why, though? What's the goal?
By altering the geographical reality, by convincing humanity that their spiritual origins were in a barren desert, rather than this resource-rich center of the Fertile Crescent, the architects of this deception could alienate successive generations from their true center of power.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic here for a second.
Go for it.
It's one thing to, rewrite a history book to make a king look better after he wins a war.
Sure.
But it's an entirely different level of conspiracy to convince an entire species that they came from a desert when they actually came from a lush river valley.
It's a huge leap.
How do you pull off a geographical heist of that magnitude? It feels like, I don't know, trying to convince the population of New York that their city was actually built in the middle of the Mojave Desert and somehow getting them to believe it for 1,000 years.
It's an incredibly fair question, and the mechanism of that deception is something we are going to explore deeply when we get to his analysis of Babylonian tactics.
Okay, I'll hold my horses on that.
But to answer the immediate logic of his premise right now, Dr. Waleed argues that if you control the spiritual coordinates of a people, you control their consciousness.
Control the coordinates, control the mind.
Exactly. If humanity is constantly looking southward toward a barren wasteland, seeking connection with the divine in a place of, historical emptiness, they remain spiritually unmoored.
They're essentially distracted.
Yes. They become unwitting subjects to the entities that actually rule the true hidden centers of power. So the fake map isn't just a mistake, it's an instrument of mass subjugation.
Man, it's turning cartography into a prison.
That's a great way to put it.
Because by making humanity fixate on a geographic void, the real power centers in the East and the West can just operate in the shadows, totally unchallenged.
That is the crux of the bewitched history. The map is a blindfold.
Okay, but if the physical maps we have on parchment or, digital screens, if they are all products of this bewitched history...
Which he says they are.
Right. Then where do we find the objective truth? If every atlas is compromised, how do we navigate back to this Fertile Crescent reality?
Well, this brings us back to the hands.
Okay.
This is where Dr. Waleed transitions from macrogeography to microbiology. He introduces what he calls the exposing hand.
The exposing hand. I love the dramatic flair of that.
It is dramatic. So in Dr. Waleed's framework, the creator knew that external physical maps were vulnerable.
Because they can be burned.
Exactly. They could be burned, altered, rewritten by conquering empires. So to ensure the truth survived the grand deception, the coordinates of the true sacred geography were embedded onto the physical bodies of human beings.
So every listener tuning in right now is currently carrying an unfalsifiable biological document.
Yes. And reading this document requires a very specific orientation. When you hold your hands open in supplication, like we did at the start of the deep dive,
Right.
you are actually opening a topographical map of the true Arabian Peninsula.
Okay, let's decode this map for the listener, line by line. Let's start with the right hand.
Okay, so look at your right hand. According to Dr. Waleed, the right hand represents the western domain of this Fertile Crescent geography.
The western domain.
If you look at your right palm, you typically see a series of prominent intersecting lines branching outward. In his interpretation, those three main lines represent the Nile Delta.
The Nile Delta.
Yeah.
Just right there on your palm.
Right. Specifically, he identifies them as the physical representation of the river branching out into the Rosetta or Rashid branch and the Damietta branch,
Oh, wow.
flowing outward toward the Mediterranean Sea. So the topography of your palm literally mirrors the topography of the western boundary.
That is an incredibly vivid visual. I mean, just picturing the branching creases of your flesh corresponding to river channels cutting through the earth.
It's very poetic.
But what about the other lines? There's more than just those branches.
Right, so move your gaze slightly to the left of those main Nile lines on your right palm,
Okay, moving left.
moving inward toward the edge of your hand, where it would meet your left hand if you held them together. You'll often see a distinct, somewhat separate vertical line there. Dr. Waleed asserts this singular line represents the Jordan River.
Okay, so the right hand holds the Nile River Delta, and it holds the Jordan River.
Yes.
What happens when we look at the left hand?
The left hand represents the eastern domain. The major, deep lines crossing your left palm represent the convergence of the great eastern rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates.
The rivers that define ancient Babylon.
Exactly. These lines represent the flow of those ancient rivers downward into the Arab Gulf.
Okay, I see where this is going.
And mirroring the right hand, if you look to the inner edge of your left palm, the side facing the right hand, you will find another singular vertical line.
Let me guess.
This, too, represents the Jordan River.
Wait, the Jordan River's on both hands.
It acts as the central axis.
Oh, wow. So when you put the two hands together, those two inner lines align. It's perfectly symmetrical. You have the western rivers of Egypt on the far right hand, the eastern rivers of Babylon on the far left hand, and running straight down the absolute center, dividing the two hemispheres of the body, is the Jordan River.
Yes, it is an anatomical compass.
It's a flesh and blood GPS system. The physical divide between your hands mirrors the geographical divide of the ancient world. The Jordan River is the literal and metaphorical middle ground between two extreme domains.
It's the anchor point. Wait, but as you know, a compass only works if you calibrate it.
Right. A map is useless if you don't know which way is north.
Right.
So how does Dr. Waleed instruct the reader to orient this biological map? Because, if I just turn around in my living room, my right hand is suddenly facing a different direction.
And that's exactly why the physical orientation is the key to unlocking the whole system.
Okay.
The map in your hands only aligns with the geography of the Earth when your physical body assumes a very specific, deeply symbolic posture. Dr. Waleed insists that this orientation requires turning your back securely toward the true Qibla.
The true direction of prayer.
Yeah.
Which, in his remapped world, is where?
Baka.
Jerusalem.
Okay. So my back is to Jerusalem.
By placing your back to Jerusalem, you are anchoring yourself in the true center. You are being protected by it. It's the safe haven behind you. And from that protected stance, you face forward.
Facing forward toward what exactly?
Toward what he defines as the enemy.
The enemy.
When you stand with your back to Jerusalem, you are looking southward. You are facing the old forbidden sanctuary, which he locates in Petra, Jordan.
Okay.
And the new forbidden sanctuary, which he locates in the desert of Mecca.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me visualize the geometry of this just to make sure I have it right.
Paint the picture.
I am standing with my back anchored to Jerusalem. I am looking down south toward Petra and the desert of Mecca.
Right.
In that physical stance, I bring my hands up in front of me, open.
Yes.
My right hand, better the biological lines of the Nile, is geographically pointing toward my west, where the actual Nile is located.
And my left hand, bearing the biological lines of the Tigris and Euphrates, is geographically pointing toward my east.
Where the actual rivers of Babylon flow?
That is wild.
The biological architecture of your body aligns flawlessly with the geographical architecture of the Earth, but only if you accept his foundational premise.
Which is that Jerusalem is the true center, the anchor point of human reality.
Exactly.
I can completely see why this is so persuasive as a theoretical framework for someone reading his text. He takes something impossibly vast, right? Like global geography, ancient history, tectonic shifts in theology.
Huge concepts.
And he makes it intimate. He literally places the entire argument right into the reader's hands.
It grounds the theory in your own body.
It does. But establishing the map is just setting the stage. We have the boundaries now. We have the Nile to the west, the Euphrates to the east, Jerusalem in the center. But who is occupying this territory?
The players.
Right, because a map without political actors is just dirt and water. What's happening on this stage?
Well, Dr. Waleed populates this map with a very specific, highly polarized dynamic. He builds what we could describe as a cosmic geopolitical triangle.
A triangle. Yeah.
He divides this true geographical realm into three distinct competing poles of power.
Okay, let's break this triangle down for everyone. Let's start with the peripheries before we examine the center. Let's look to the west, to the right hand. Who's there?
On the west, anchored by the Nile, you have the domain he calls Gypt, or Kemet. In Dr. Waleed's lexicon, this is known as the Kingdom of the Moon.
The Kingdom of the Moon?
Yes.
What kind of civilization is that? Like, what does moon power actually look like in this ancient context?
The Kingdom of the Moon represents ritualistic, esoteric, and intensely religious power.
Okay.
It is a society built on strict spiritual hierarchy, elaborate rites, and closely guarded knowledge. Dr. Waleed associates this domain deeply with the figure of Idris.
So it's not about brute force then?
Not at all. This isn't brute force. It is the power of ritual, the dominance of the priestly class, the mesmerizing pull of esoteric tradition. It's control through mystery.
So the West is characterized by spiritual hegemony, an empire of the mind and the ritual.
Precisely.
All right, let's pivot to the left, to the east, the other side of the triangle.
On the east, anchored by the Euphrates, you have Babylon. He also refers to this domain as Tawkut, and this is the Kingdom of the Sun.
The Kingdom of the Sun. So if the moon is religious and ritualistic, what defines the Kingdom of the Sun?
The sun represents material, military, and financial power.
The complete opposite.
Exactly. It is the empire of industry, brute force, economic dominance, and technological manipulation. And crucially, in his framework, this Eastern kingdom is the domain intimately associated with Iblis Satan.
Okay, so we have a really profound structural dichotomy here.
Very stark.
On the right, the moon, esoteric, religious, ritualistic Egypt. On the left, the sun, material, militaristic, financial Babylon. It is literally the classic struggle of spirit versus matter, priest versus warlord, mysticism versus industry. But it seems like Dr. Waleed views both of these poles as inherently dangerous extremes, right?
Oh, absolutely. They are twin corruptions.
Twin corruption.
One corrupts through the intoxicating allure of ritual and hidden knowledge, pulling you away from reality.
Right.
The other corrupts through the crushing weight of material wealth and military violence. To submit to either of them is to lose the true path entirely.
Which brings us to the apex of the triangle, the center.
The center. Baka. Jerusalem.
Tell me about the center.
Jerusalem represents the true middle ground. Dr. Waleed refers to it as the paradise of refuge.
Paradise of refuge.
It is the geographical and spiritual fulcrum. It represents the divine, perfectly balanced path of Adam and, by extension, the intended path for all of true humanity.
So it's the balance point.
Exactly. The center is meant to act as the stabilizing force, preventing humanity from being devoured by the ritualistic extreme of the West or the material extreme of the East.
Okay, I have to stop you right here.
Uh-oh.
Because this is the point in Dr. Waleed's text where he makes a geographical claim that almost broke my brain when I read it.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I mean, when he's discussing this center, this paradise of refuge, he completely redefines two of the most legendary, culturally entrenched cities in human history.
You are talking about his redefinition of Medina and Atlantis.
Yes. Because in the conventional understanding, those two places have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
None at all.
And neither of them is in Jerusalem.
Right.
I mean, Medina is the city the Prophet Muhammad migrated to, firmly established in the Arabian desert.
Yes.
And Atlantis is the mythical, utopian civilization written about by Plato, famously known for sinking into the ocean.
Also true.
Dr. Waleed takes both of these completely disparate locations and merges them directly into Jerusalem.
He does.
How does he possibly justify that, physically or linguistically?
It requires looking at the etymology rather than the accepted folklore.
Etymology? Okay, break that down.
Dr. Waleed argues that Baka Jerusalem is the true historical Medina. He translates Medina conceptually, focusing on the root meaning of the word, which implies a jurisdiction or a central round city of governance and refuge.
So he's not looking at it as a proper noun.
Exactly. He's saying it's a concept, a title, rather than accepting it as the proper name of that specific desert settlement.
He strips the name of its current geographical address and reclaims its conceptual definition.
Right. And he applies a very similar linguistic deconstruction to Atlantis.
Okay, let's hear this one.
He challenges the Greek myth of the sunken continent by playing with the translation of the word itself. In his interpretation, Atlantis translates closer to the city present by the sea.
But wait, hold on. Atlantis is universally known as a maritime civilization that was swallowed by the ocean.
That's the myth, yes.
Jerusalem is a landlocked city sitting on a rocky plateau in the Judean mountains. How does he bridge that massive physical contradiction?
Well, first, look at his map. In his reconfigured Fertile Crescent, Jerusalem is centrally located, and it's heavily influenced by its proximity to both the Mediterranean Sea and the Dead Sea.
Okay, fair.
But more importantly, the sinking of Atlantis in Dr. Waleed's framework isn't a geological event.
It's not.
No, it is a metaphysical one.
Okay, so the city didn't drown in water.
It drowned in deception. It sank beneath the bewitched history. Atlantis was swallowed by the grand psychological operation that hid the true center from humanity.
Wow.
By calling Jerusalem both Medina and Atlantis, he is gathering the fragmented global myths of a lost utopian center of divine power and concentrating them into a single, undeniable geographic coordinate.
It's the ultimate center point of human consciousness, lost to history, but preserved in myth.
Exactly. It's all pointing to the same place.
You know, that reframing actually makes a strange kind of sense within his system.
It's very internally consistent.
Yeah. If you believe the history was erased, then the myths are just the corrupted memories of that erased history. So we have the moon pulling us toward ritualistic extremes on one side. We have the sun pulling us toward material extremes on the other side. And this lost Atlantis Medina of Jerusalem trying to hold humanity together in the center.
And this geopolitical struggle entirely alters how Dr. Waleed interprets sacred scripture.
How so?
Because if you read the texts through this specific lens, they stop reading like religious dogma and they start reading like political survival guides.
Political survival guides. Give me an example.
Take the famous Quranic verse that translates to, "Do not prostrate to the sun or the moon."
Okay, traditionally, that is understood as a very straightforward basic commandment against pagan idolatry.
Right.
Like, don't worship celestial bodies, don't pray to rocks floating in space.
Exactly. But apply the geopolitical triangle we just built. If the sun is the code word for Babylon and the moon is the code word for Gypt or Egypt, that verse undergoes a radical transformation.
Wait. Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
The text isn't telling you to avoid astronomy.
No.
It's giving you ancient foreign policy advice.
It's a geopolitical treaty masquerading as theology.
Wow.
It is explicitly commanding the reader, do not submit to the military, financial, and material superpower of the East, the sun, Babylon.
Right.
And do not submit to the ritualistic, esoteric superpower of the West, the moon, Gypt.
So the commandment is basically political independence.
Yes. Submit only to the Creator in the center. Remain in Baka. Do not allow your consciousness or your society to be co-opted by these two corrupting superpowers.
That is a staggering way to read ancient texts.
It changes everything.
It implies a level of political sophistication and encoding that totally changes the nature of the scripture. But, and there's a big but here,
Just been listening.
this raises a massive chronological issue.
Okay.
If this war between the sun, the moon, and the center is the defining foundational conflict of this geography, who exactly was fighting this war before Adam even arrived on the scene? Because Dr. Waleed strongly implies that this geopolitical meat grinder predates humanity.
It absolutely predates Adam in this framework. And to understand the depth of the deception that swallowed Atlantis, we really have to explore Dr. Waleed's pre-Adamite history.
Okay.
We have to look at what was happening in the East, in Babylon, before the first human took a breath.
Let's dive into the pre-Adamite wars then. The whole concept that the earth was already populated, already divided, and already engaged in massive ideological and military conflicts before the Genesis narrative or the Quranic creation of Adam even begins.
It's a dark history. According to Dr. Waleed, Babylon wasn't just a human settlement that eventually got corrupted over time.
No.
It was the epicenter of a pre-Adamite cosmic struggle. And the key operators in this struggle are entities that most listeners will probably recognize from religious eschatology, but Dr. Waleed redefines them completely.
Who are they?
Yaju and Maju.
Gog and Magog. Okay.
Yeah.
In conventional theology, these are apocalyptic terrors.
Monsters, basically.
Right. They are usually depicted as monstrous, mindless hordes locked away behind an iron wall, just waiting for the end of days to break out and consume the world. They are literally the boogeymen of the apocalypse.
And Dr. Waleed strips away that monster myth entirely.
No monsters.
None. In his framework, Yajuj and Majuj are not mythical beasts at the end of time. They were highly sophisticated, ancient pre-Adamite political and military factions.
Excellent.
And controversially, he links them intricately to the ancient lineages of the children of Israel.
Wait, factions, like ancient political parties or intelligence agencies?
Exactly like that. They were organized syndicates of power with very specific operational roles within this ancient world.
Okay, how does he break them down?
Dr. Waleed categorizes them by their methods of control. Let's examine the Ya'juj first.
All right.
He defines the Ya'juj as political and religious corruptors.
What was their methodology? How did they corrupt?
They operated through ideological subversion. They absorbed the knowledge of Babylon and weaponized it for political dominance.
Yeah.
They were the intellectual manipulators, the architects of psychological operations. As he sees it, they didn't need to conquer you with a sword if they could conquer your perception of reality.
Okay, that makes sense. And the Majuj, the other half?
The Majuj were the kinetic force.
The muscle.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed describes them as the military and financial bloodshedders. While the Ya'juj manipulated minds and narratives from Babylon, the Majuj operated out of the southern regions, specifically Petra, enforcing this control through brutal violence, physical intimidation, and ruthless economic extraction.
Okay, so it is a classic two-pronged syndicate.
Yes.
The Ya'juj are the ancient equivalent of a corrupted intelligence agency running psyops, and the Majuj are the military-industrial complex enforcing the New World Order with overwhelming force.
Perfect summary.
But you mentioned earlier that the Ya'juj absorbed knowledge in Babylon.
I did.
Where did this highly advanced corruptible knowledge come from? I mean, who taught it to them?
To explain the source code of this knowledge, Dr. Waleed turns to the narrative of the angels Harut and Marut.
The two angels who descended to Babylon.
Right.
In traditional stories, they're usually framed as a test for humanity. Like, they came down to teach magic just to see who would fall into sin.
And Dr. Waleed provides a much more profound analysis of their mission. He argues that Harut and Marut were not sent to teach parlor tricks or just to be a temptation.
What were they doing then?
They were sent to Babylon to impart objective truth. They brought profound divine knowledge, perhaps advanced sciences, structural truths about the universe, and deep spiritual realities that were meant to elevate the inhabitants of the earth.
So they brought the literal light of truth to the east.
But the Ya'juj intercepted this transmission.
Oh.
These pre-Adamite political corruptors took the divine structural truths taught by the angels and systematically inverted them.
They corrupted the code.
Exactly. They reverse-engineered the truth to create a weapon of deception.
Right.
They turned divine knowledge into what the texts refer to as Sir magic.
We really need to drill down into his definition of Sir or magic here.
It's vital.
Because it is the absolute linchpin of his entire theory regarding the fake map. There is a very specific, famous reference in the Quran regarding the magic that was taught in Babylon.
Right.
The text states that they learned magic that could separate a man from his wife.
Yes.
Now, traditionally, scholars read that and assume it means they learned hexes or spells to cause domestic disputes.
Mm.
You know, black magic for divorces.
Yes.
And Dr. Waleed argues that such a literal domestic reading is woefully narrow, and it misses the catastrophic cosmic scale of what was actually deployed.
Okay.
In his framework, separating a man from his wife is a profound metaphysical metaphor for a much larger severing.
What were they actually separating?
They were executing a cosmic schism.
Yeah.
They were separating the heavenly spirit from the earthly soul. They were severing the connection between humanity and its divine design.
Wow.
And crucially, in the context of his geographical thesis, this magic was a targeted operation designed to separate humanity's consciousness from its true geographic home.
They were separating the son of Adam from Baka, from Jerusalem. Exactly. The magic of Babylon wasn't a spell, like a witch's brew. It was an unparalleled disinformation campaign.
A psyop.
It was the power to sever the cognitive cord that anchored human memory to the Fertile Crescent. The spell was cast to induce a collective amnesia, basically making humanity forget the true center and wander blindly toward a fabricated, barren sanctuary in the desert.
I want to really highlight this for the listener because it's just a brilliant reframing of mythology. Dr. Waleed is essentially describing an ancient, species-wide psychological operation.
It's exactly what it is.
It's like the Mandela effect,
Yeah.
but weaponized by an ancient empire.
Weaponized memory.
Yeah, because if you want to permanently conquer a civilization,
Mm-hmm.
bombing their cities only works until they rebuild.
Right, they always rebuild.
But if you hack the collective memory of humanity, if you rewrite their history books, move the coordinates of their sacred sites, and convince them their homeland is a desert wasteland instead of a thriving river valley, You have conquered them forever.
They won't even know they're in exile.
They won't even know.
That is precisely the mechanism of the bewitched history. And Dr. Waleed finds further textual evidence of this psychological warfare in another really enigmatic Quranic phrase.
Which phrase?
Amuka wa al-tasdiya.
Which translates roughly to whistling and clapping.
Yes.
In conventional commentary, this is often described as pagan Arabs mocking the believers, making noise near the Kaaba to disrupt prayer.
And Dr. Waleed pulls that phrase completely out of the context of simple mockery. He reinterprets it through the lens of advanced information warfare.
Okay, what does he think it means?
He argues that whistling and clapping is actually a metaphor for signal jamming.
Signal jamming, like a cryptographic hash or a barrage of spiritual static.
Exactly. He asserts that this phrase describes the Ajud factions using their inverted Babylonian knowledge to actively jam the divine frequency emanating from the true center in Jerusalem.
That is fascinating.
The whistling and clapping represents the relentless noise of the false historical narrative. It's the static generated by the fabricated desert map, deliberately broadcast to drown out the true signal of Baka.
So they flooded the zone with noise?
They flooded the zone with geographical noise so humanity could never tune back into the true coordinate.
The scale of this theory is just relentless. You have this ancient syndicate armed with inverted angelic knowledge, running a continuous psychological operation to jam the spiritual frequency of humanity, thereby blinding us to the true center of the world and keeping us subservient to the material East and the ritualistic West.
It's incredibly cohesive.
It is an incredibly cohesive narrative architecture.
Yeah.
But we have to ask the practical question here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this interference campaign was entirely successful, and according to his premise, it was, because the whole world currently prays toward the desert, how did it alter the physical stone and mortar landmarks we know today?
Right.
Because you can jam a signal, sure, but you can't easily hide a mountain or a massive mosque. If the map moved, what happened to the sacred architecture?
This is where Dr. Waleed transitions from philosophical history and information warfare back into strict, rigid geography.
Okay.
He provides highly specific, unforgiving corrections regarding the physical locations of the holy mosques and sacred sites.
And again, we must remind the listener that we are impartially tracing his alternative blueprint here, not establishing historical fact.
Right, this is his framework.
Let's lay out his new blueprint then. How does he remap the three most important mosques in Islamic tradition?
He reassigns them entirely to fit his Fertile Crescent model. He anchors them strictly to his defined zones of permissible and forbidden spaces. Let's start with Al-Masjid al-Haram, the sacred mosque.
Okay.
In conventional, accepted geography, this is located in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, housing the Kaaba.
The epicenter of the modern pilgrimage.
Yes. But in Dr. Waleed's strict reassignment, Al-Masjid al-Haram is stripped from the desert and placed squarely in Baka, which is Jerusalem.
So he moves it to the center.
He designates this as the absolute center, the permissible area.
So the sacred mosque is returned to the center. What about Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, the farthest mosque? Because in conventional geography, that actually is in Jerusalem.
And here, he shifts it away from the center.
He moves it out.
Yes. He relocates Al-Masjid al-Aqsa to a region he calls the Yam, which he specifically identifies as the Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea. That is a massive theological shift. Why place the farthest mosque at the lowest elevation on Earth at a body of dead water?
Because in his architectural mapping, the Dead Sea region corresponds structurally to the area of the Sad, which translates to the dam.
The dam. Okay, we'll need to define what that dam is holding back in a moment. Let's get the third mosque placed first.
Right.
Al-Masjid al-Dirar, the Mosque of Haram, or the Mosque of Descent.
Dr. Waleed locates this mosque in the regions he identifies as the old sanctuary of Petra and the new sanctuary of Mecca in the desert.
Right.
He labels this entire southern region as the forbidden area.
He takes Mecca, currently revered as the holiest site, and explicitly labels it the Mosque of Haram, locating in the forbidden zone.
He does.
That is an astonishingly provocative theological claim.
It is the ultimate manifestation of his thesis that the current global focus on the desert is the masterpiece of the Babylonian deception.
Right.
And to reinforce these locations, he links them to specific architectural features mentioned in the sacred texts. The barrier, the dam, and the wall. He isn't just moving buildings, he is mapping out spiritual containment fields.
Containment fields. Break down these structures. Where are they on his map?
Dr. Waleed's clarifying notes are extremely explicit about these coordinates.
Okay.
First, we have the radam, which translates to the barrier. He places this barrier in the forbidden zone encompassing Mecca and Petra.
Okay.
This is the structure fundamentally associated with holding back the chaotic, violent forces of the Majus.
The military muscle.
Exactly. Second, we have the Sad, the dam. As we noted, he places this in the Haram area at the Yam, the Dead Sea. Third, we have the Sor, the wall. He locates the wall in the permissible area, the true center, Baka or Jerusalem.
Barrier, dam, wall. In English, we might use those interchangeably, but in his map, they are precise, distinct coordinates defining the spiritual boundaries of his re-engineered world.
They're very distinct functions.
A dam holds back a flood, perhaps the flood of corrupted history. A wall protects a sanctuary. But what about the natural architecture, the mountains?
The mountains are key.
Because so much of the ancient narrative, the divine revelations, they happen on specific mountains. Mount Sinai is arguably the most famous.
He remaps the mountains to perfectly maintain the symmetry of his east versus west, sun versus moon divide. He describes a geographic balance he calls the dual mountains, or Tur.
Dual mountains, one on the right hand, one on the left hand.
Precisely. On the west, linked to the blessed land of Palestine and protected by the ritualistic kingdom of the Moongypt, you have Mount Sinai, or Tur Sinai.
So Sinai anchors the west.
And on the east, linked to the Holy Land of Jordan and protected by the material kingdom of the sun Babylon, you have Mount Seir, or Tur Senin.
Sinai anchoring the west, Senin anchoring the east. When you step back and look at the whole board Dr. Waleed has constructed, the symmetry is almost intimidating.
It's airtight in its own logic.
He hasn't just argued that a city was misplaced. He has re-engineered the entire sacred grid of the planet. He has taken rivers, mountains, mosques, and spiritual containment fields and assigned them to exact coordinates between the Nile and the Euphrates, perfectly mirrored by the biological lines on the human hands.
It's an architecture of consciousness.
It really is.
He has built a physical structure that perfectly mirrors his spiritual philosophy. Everything has a counterweight.
But I keep coming back to the human element of all this.
How so?
If a reader works through this text, traces the lines on their hands, and accepts this staggering paradigm shift.
What then?
The application. Right. If everything you thought was structurally true about the world is actually a Babylonian illusion, a matrix of bewitched history, how does Dr. Waleed suggest an individual processes that awakening? Because that realization would be psychologically crushing.
It would be devastating. And that leads us to the final and perhaps most unexpectedly brilliant component of his work.
Okay.
Dr. Waleed doesn't just leave the reader stranded with a shattered worldview. He provides a formula for how to process the awakening. And true to his incredibly unique synthesizing thought process, he turns to the language of quantum physics and mathematics to explain it.
He introduces an equation.
Yes. He calls it the K equation.
A K equation.
He uses it as a metaphorical mathematical framework to explain the mechanics of spiritual realization and the breaking of the Babylonian spell.
I genuinely love this, integrating the strict rules of physics into esoteric theology.
Yeah.
Let's break down the variables of this K equation. What are we actually calculating?
There are three main variables in his formula. The first is omega.
Omega, the Greek letter.
Yes.
In conventional physics, it can represent the end of a system, or more commonly ohms, the unit of electrical resistance. How does Dr. Waleed apply it?
In the K equation, omega represents exactly that, resistance.
Okay.
Specifically, it represents the filling or the historical friction. Omega is the mathematical symbol for the magic, the illusion, the Sur of Babylon.
Oh, I see.
It represents the density of the fabricated history that covered the true geography of Jerusalem and replaced it with the void of the desert in the human mind. Omega is the overwhelming resistance you face when trying to see the truth. It is the accumulated weight of the bewitched history pushing against your consciousness.
So omega is the lie.
Yes.
It is the static from the whistling and clapping. It is the gravity of the false map keeping you anchored in the illusion. What is the second variable?
The second variable is psi.
Psi, the pitchfork symbol. In quantum mechanics, psi is the wave function. It describes the quantum state of a system, the realm of possibilities, before an observation collapses it into a single reality.
And Dr. Waleed uses it in a remarkably parallel way.
How so?
For him, psi represents the wave function of the human soul. It is the active, conscious path of returning to the truth.
How do you activate it?
How do you activate the psi function? By contemplating the universe, by actively questioning inherited dogmas, and most crucially, by observing the biological lines on your own hand.
Wow.
Psi is the active process of navigating through the resistance of omega. It is the mind searching for the true coordinate.
So omega is the trap of fate history, and psi is the cognitive action of reading the biological map to escape the trap. You have the resistance, and you have the wave function pushing against it.
Exactly.
What is the final variable that resolves the equation?
The final variable is d-tau.
In physics, tau often relates to time, specifically proper time and relativity, the time measured by a clock moving along with a specific observer.
And Dr. Waleed beautifully terms this light time.
Light time. That is incredibly poetic. What does light time represent in the equation of human awakening?
It is the exact illuminating moment of realization.
The light bulb moment.
Exactly. It is that split-second breakthrough, the epiphany, when a believer finally wakes up, connects the biological map etched into their physical hand with the true geography of the Earth, and realizes their true heritage.
So it's the answer.
It is the moment the wave function of psi collapses the overwhelming illusion of omega, resulting in the brilliant flash of tau. The resistance shatters, and the truth is illuminated.
It is literally the mathematics of waking up from the matrix.
It really is.
I am fascinated by how he constructs this. He turns the act of reading history into a mathematical inevitability. It's as if he's saying, this isn't just my alternative theory. If you follow the biological variables, if you look at your hand and you apply the wave function to critical thought, you will inevitably solve the equation.
Yes.
And the answer to the K equation is always inevitably finding your way back to Jerusalem.
He is providing a rigorous scientific veneer to a deeply mystical experience. He is arguing that truth isn't just a matter of faith, it is a structural reality that can be calculated and observed if you know which instruments to use.
So let's bring this massive intellectual architecture all together. We have relocated the Arabian Peninsula from the arid south to the fertile north.
We have.
We have discovered the unfalsifiable map carved into the palms of our hands. We have navigated the cosmic geopolitical war between the material dominance of the sun in Babylon and the ritualistic dominance of the moon in Egypt.
Right.
We have unmasked the pre-Adamite syndicate of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, recognizing their Babylonian magic not as spells, but as a species-wide psychological operation designed to jam our spiritual frequency.
What jamming signal?
We have remapped the sacred architecture of the world, moving mosques, dams, and barriers. And finally, we have solved the K equation, collapsing the wave function of our own false history.
It's a journey.
After taking the reader on this staggering journey, what is the ultimate takeaway? What is Dr. Waleed asking of his reader, whom he often addresses directly as the son of Adam?
His overarching plea is a desperate call for reclamation.
Reclamation of what?
He is calling for an Adamite biological and spiritual revolution. Dr. Waleed is urging humanity to stop blindly trusting inherited traditions and orthodoxies.
That get compromised.
Exactly. He believes those traditions have catastrophically failed us, that they have been deeply, fundamentally corrupted by ancient political manipulation and the interference of Babylonian magic.
He's demanding radical, uncompromising skepticism.
He is asking humans to reclaim their status as critical thinkers, to stop looking at the bewitched maps drawn by ancient victors and modern empires, and instead to look at the undeniable evidence in their own hands.
Look at the biology.
Yes. He wants the son of Adam to reclaim their rightful status as the heirs of the true center of the world, Baka. The ultimate goal of the text is to break the spell of the desert, to collapse the resistance of Omega, and to guide humanity back to the fertile crescent of their own consciousness.
It is an incredibly dense, labyrinthine, and wildly ambitious theory. It requires the reader to dismantle literally everything they know about geography, history, and theology, and rebuild it from the biological ground up, using the creases in their skin as the only trusted blueprint.
Which is exactly why it is so profoundly fascinating to analyze as an intellectual architecture. Whether an individual agrees with a single premise of his framework or rejects it entirely, the sheer scale and internal cohesion of Dr. Waleed's exposing hand is a testament to the human desire to find order, meaning, symmetry, and hidden truths in a world that often feels chaotic and deeply deceptive.
I want to sincerely thank you for helping navigate this incredibly deep dive. This is not easy material to synthesize, and breaking down the geopolitical triangles, the information warfare, and the spiritual physics of Dr. Khaled Waleed has been a truly mind-bending journey.
It has been a remarkable exercise in exploring the outer limits of alternative historical paradigms.
As we wrap up today's exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on the very foundation of what Dr. Waleed is arguing.
I think we need one more mind bender to go out on.
We all have heard the old, tired adage that history is written by the victors, right? We accept that as a given reality of human civilization. We know that the stories we are told in textbooks are often shaped, smoothed over, or outright fabricated by whoever won the last war.
Right, that's just how power works.
But if we accept that history is written by the victors, we must challenge ourselves with a much deeper, more unsettling question.
What's that?
Are the maps drawn by the victors as well? Think about the mechanics of total conquest. If an ancient, immense power wanted to conquer a people forever, not just subjugate them for a generation, but erase them for eternity, simply winning a battle on a field wouldn't be enough.
It never is.
Eventually, the conquered people would remember who they were, and they would rise up to reclaim their homeland. So wouldn't the ultimate victory, the only truly permanent conquest, be convincing that population that their true homeland never existed in the first place?
The perfect erasure.
Wouldn't the perfect crime be to alter the coordinates of their holy sites, to point their compasses toward a barren, disconnected desert, and watch them wander in spiritual and geographical exile forever, praying to avoid while the victors controlled the true center of the world?
That is a terrifying premise.
And if that terrifying premise were true, if the physical map of the world is just another weapon of the victor, another piece of bewitched history, maybe Dr. Waleed is right about one foundational thing. Maybe the only map you can truly trust, the only document that hasn't been compromised, is the one you were born with, the one hidden in plain sight, right in the palms of your hands. Keep questioning your world. Keep looking closely at the things you've been told to take for granted. And thank you for joining us on this deep dive.